Hello and welcome to the AIMSweb training session. This presentation will provide participants with detailed information about how the measures in AIMSweb specific to mathematics were developed. Also included will be protocols for administration as well as proper procedures for scoring. The Mathematics Computation Assessments, also known as M-COMP, consist of a series of assessments that assess general math computation skills. These assessments may be administered to a large group, small group, or individually. We will administer the M-COMP benchmark probe to all students in grades 1 through 5 3 times per year. If necessary, the M-COMP can be used as a weekly progress monitoring tool. The Mathematics Concepts and Applications Assessments, also known as the MCAP, consist of a series of assessments that assess general math problem-solving skills. These assessments may be administered to a large group, small group, or individually. We will administer the MCAP benchmark probe to all students in grades 2 through 5 3 times per year. If necessary, the MCAP can also be used as a weekly progress monitoring tool. AIMSweb is structured around the National Council of Teachers of Mathematics Curriculum Focal Points. The NCTM Curriculum Focal Points were released in 2006. These focal points were a critical resource for the developers of the Common Core state standards. The two documents have much in common and cumulatively describe substantially similar bodies of knowledge. However, there are some minor differences with regard to geometry and probability content in the middle school grades. As you can see on this graphic, although it be a little blurry, the AIMSweb math assessments have been written to assess the skills relevant to the progression of learning targets identical to that prescribed by the Common Core state standards. Here's another table that demonstrates graphically the progression of fact fluency being assessed at each grade level by the M-COMP. And here is a table that demonstrates graphically the progression of concepts and problem-solving skills being assessed at each grade level by the MCAP. Multiple nationally recognized RTI and mathematics experts were engaged in the development of the M-COMP and MCAP anchor probes for each grade level in AIMSweb. The assessment items placed on each probe are generally placed in order of increasing difficulty. Additionally, skills are presented in a similar order, frequency, and sequence across each probe and grade level band. This table describes by grade level the fall, winter, and spring benchmark assessment timeline our district will follow. I'll give you a moment so you can see how your grade level will be assessed. As we stated before, both the M-COMP and MCAP assessments may be administered to an entire class, a small group, or individually. So what planning and preparation is required prior to administering either the M-COMP or MCAP assessments? Each student will need an individual copy of the assessment, and each examiner will need a copy of the scoring key. All necessary materials for the benchmarking periods will be ordered through central office and printed at MOB. Individual schools do not need to print materials. Again, please do not print your own benchmarking materials. We will also be making copies for initial progress monitoring when it's needed. You will also need a device for timing the assessments, as well as a printed copy of the administration directions. Students are prohibited from having access to the following accommodations during screening. Calculators are not allowed. Rulers, protractors, or other manipulatives are not allowed. Math-related posters in the room must not be visible to students during testing. And finally, cell phone use is prohibited to avoid texting and calculating. During universal screening, you will use a different probe for the fall, winter, and spring benchmark sessions. You do not need to give 3 probes and take the median for any of the M-COMP or MCAP measures. They are all 1 probe each per per benchmark window. There are 33 probes for both the M-COMP and the M-CAP at each grade level. 3 of those probes will be utilized as benchmark assessments, and 30 of those probes are available for progress monitoring. In the event that a probe is spoiled and a backup probe is needed, you may simply use one of the 30 progress monitoring probes in its place. It is best practice to always make sure the students are alert and well prior to testing. The M-COMP and M-CAP measures are both standardized tests. It is critical that both of these assessments are administered in the same way each time. Please adhere to the exact standardized directions at all times. Students should not be allowed to pre-read, use the probes for practice, or use the probes for review after testing. Staff should avoid teaching or correcting students during the assessment. In order to make valid, data-based decisions, following the exact administrative protocols for each measure is vital. Now we will cover information specific to the administration of the M-COMP assessments. You would start the administration of the M-COMP assessment by reading the administrative directions verbatim. We will not be reading through these now, but we will be reading through them later in the presentation. Again, we will revisit these directions in just a bit during the practice scoring demonstration. Now these are the standard prompts that must be used to address specific issues that may arise during test administration. These prompts are included as part of the administration directions. Please collect tests immediately when time expires. All problems receive either full credit or no credit. The scoring key contains the correct answer for each item in addition to the score value for a correct answer or 0 for an incorrect answer. Score values for individual test items are pre-assigned and weighted based on item difficulty. There will be times when students' answers vary slightly from the answers provided on the scoring key. In such a circumstance, please rely on best practices and your professional judgment. Remember, our primary goal is to determine if the answer reflects an understanding of the task presented. When scoring, the final answer is what counts. When the target answer is a fraction, some students may choose to reduce or simplify the answer, even when instructions to do so has not been given. If reduced or simplified properly and calculated correctly, give the student correct credit for the answer. If the student initially provides the correct response and then makes an error when reducing or simplifying, the final answer presented is what you score. When directions may be open to interpretation, for example, the student is instructed to write the answer in lowest terms. The target answer is a mixed number, but the student provided an improper fraction. You may score a properly simplified improper fraction as correct. If the student leaves any part of the answer incomplete or unanswered, the item receives no credit. As you can see on the left, the student obviously left out the 5 in the ones place. If a student shows his or her work, but then crossed or X'd out the problem without placing the answer in the blank, the item is incorrect, and no points are given. For example, here on the top, on the left side of the example, you see that 1/7 is the correct answer, but the student crossed it out and therefore will receive no credit. Whereas on the right-hand side, you can see the 1/7 again, although it's not in the blank, is the correct answer, and that student would receive full credit. Now below, score according to the final answer. The correctness or incorrectness of the work done to get the final answer does not affect the score. Therefore, as you can see on the bottom left example down here, you see that they have the correct work, 6 plus 1 equals 7, but they have crossed that out and then put 6 in the blank. Therefore, they would receive no credit. Whereas on the right, they do have the correct answer in the blank, but the scribbled out work up there is incorrect, and that would not weigh in. As long as they have the correct answer in the blank, they will receive full credit. Give credit for a correct response regardless of where it is written in the problem box. The response does not need to be written on the blank line. As long as the response is clear and correct, it should be given credit. The exception to this, do not give credit for a crossed out correct response. If the response is hard to read but can be determined, please score the answer as correct. If the response is reversed, but it is obvious what digit the student intended, please score as correct. As you can see here, the 5 and the 7 are reversed. If the response is rotated and it cannot be easily determined what digit was intended, score as incorrect. Now, as you can see here, that first example on the left can be a little confusing, 15 plus 13. The student intended to write 28, but they've rotated the 8. And if you could say, hey, I know that that student did not intend to write 200, they indeed mean to write 28, then you could give them full credit for that. Whereas the far right example, 16 minus 10, when the students rotated the 6 and it could be mistaken for a 9, then that student would not receive credit. Students will occasionally spell out answers to problems. If the problem involves decimals and the answer is 2.5, yet the student writes 2.5 in text, you may give credit. If the student responds with $2.50, the answer is incorrect because the answer skirts the issue of decimal placement. Now, if the answer to a problem is the number 80 and the student writes in the text 80, you may give full credit. Provided the money symbol is in the correct location, there is no penalty for writing a money symbol, given though it is in addition to the answer. So as you can see in both of these examples, neither example initially in the initial problem represented monetary values, yet the students have put in the dollar sign on the left and the cents on the right, and those students would still receive full credit. Now, if a student writes out the answer to a question and uses "and" instead of a decimal, no credit is given. Some responses may be reduced to a simpler form. Fractions do not need to be reduced to lowest form unless the item requires it. If the instructions do not require that the student write the answer in the lowest terms, correct answers may vary. With some items, such as division items, the correct answer can be presented with the remainder. It is appropriate for the student to present the remainder as a decimal, fraction, or with an R followed by the remainder. Here are two sample problems where the student did not simplify their answer. As you can see, their answers are included in the list of acceptable responses from the teacher answer key. And on the right-hand side, those are just screenshots of the solutions that are a possibility in the answer key. We will now complete some M-COMP practice exercises. Your trainer will now read aloud the administration and scoring directions for the M-COMP measures. Score the M-COMP practice exercise provided to you in your packet, according to the proper administration and scoring rules. Discuss your results with your trainer when the group has completed the task. Now please remember, in the packet you've been provided are some screenshot captures of the rules, the scoring rules that have been placed in front of you. So please use that as a reference as you work through the scoring practice. Thank you.